you need to be likable. If you're not likable, you better have a lot of money and you better have a lot of associations.
Mr. Steve Smithwick, did you always think about organizational structure in your mind, or was it more just like...
I mean, I'd probably rather be out there on a forklift loading a truck.
Do you ever get to do that now? No, you never.
All three of my sons are different.
Which one's your favorite?
You bought out the partners. Was that an emotional kind of thing that happened, or was that always just strictly business? It started in a warehouse, a couple of partners, a few products, no roadmap, just work ethic, faith, and a belief that doing the right things still mattered. Steve Smithwick built Masterwall from the ground up. And along the way, he bought out his partners, he brought in his kids, and he held strong to a vision that was more than just profits. Today, Masterwall is a nationally recognized name, but Steve still shows up with the same steady hands and quiet resolve he had when it first started. Over the next hour, we'll talk about what it means to build with purpose, lead through hard seasons, and raise up the next generation from within. Let's jump into the full conversation with Steve Smithwick. Mr. Steve Smithwick, I appreciate you being here. Thanks for doing this. This is, a new kind of idea that we had to talk to business owners about how you have started business, what your experiences were before the business, what kind of caused you to do that. So I appreciate you coming and taking the time. I'm really excited to get to talk to you.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Exciting conversation to take place here.
Yeah, we hope so. We'll get into it. But so let's kind of set the stage here. So if we could start with the big picture, how would you describe what you guys do at Masterwall, and what makes you proud of where you guys are today?
Well, what makes me proud of Masterwall is our culture, basically. But what we do is we manufacture an exterior wall system. It's called EIFS, and it's several layers. We manufacture the adhesives and resell the fiberglass mesh, certain other components and other coatings that go with the wall system. And we don't install it. We sell it through distribution, and they sell it to contractors. So that's the big picture of Masterwall.
But you're in the manufacturing piece of that,
yes,
and then the sales piece as well.
Uh-huh.
Okay,
yep.
Interesting. So take us back to before you started Masterwall. What did your life look like? Did you always know that you had sort of an entrepreneur path in your future, or was that something you just sort of stumbled into?
Pretty much stumbled into it. I've always been probably in the situations I was in, such as the production areas that I ran, I always kind of thought I had better ideas, but the people above me didn't always think so.
Yeah.
So that's the only inkling I had that maybe being an entrepreneur was something I would want. What happened was, though, I moved my family from Marietta, Georgia to Columbus, Georgia to go work for a company down here. And started a career that I thought was one of those forever careers. My father was with General Motors for 32 years. So I was kind of thinking that was what was laid out for me also. Yeah. After working for that company in Columbus for 7 years, bottom line, I got fired. And so that motivates you to do certain things. I had 4 children. One of them was a little less than a year old. Okay. And so I had to do something fast.
Not exactly good timing.
You would think terrible timing. Yeah. But as with so many things in life, some of the worst things that happen become some of the best things that happen.
It brings out the best in you.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
It does.
Yeah.
So, and being in the production, part of who's now one of our competitors that I was working for, I knew a lot about products, vendors, how you make things. So I got a lot of people really pushed me, hey, you ought to do this. You can do this. You know everything you need to know to make these type products. And as time went along, I started doing some consulting work with some other competitors for a few months. And as I did that, I said, I think I can do this. Yeah. And so we incorporated in December of 1987, Masterwall, and took off.
How long had you been going before then? Because did you always think about organizational structure in your mind, or was it more just like, I know what I got to do, I got to hit the ground running, I've got to set these pieces in place, and I'll get to that stuff later?
Yeah, the organizational structure was not even on my mind hardly. I had to figure out a way to make product.
Right.
And which took equipment. You had to have vendor relationships, people to buy those things from. I had no credit. I had very little cash. There were a lot of challenges ahead of organizational structure,
Especially when you're manufacturing, because that's really, capital intensive from a certain standpoint, especially when you're just starting.
And it's not the most glamorous part of the business either, but that's the part I knew. best.
So did it translate well into, being able to manufacture and figure out a sales process, and then, obviously the structure would come later. What was that? Were there like major aha moments there, or was it just like you just kind of figured it out in increments as you went along?
Well, the sales part and the administrative part I just figured out as I went along, basically. All the challenges of production for those first couple of years particularly just took up all my time.
Right.
I had a partner who was actually a contractor, and so he helped me as I made products. I would give them to him and let him try them, and he'd give me feedback. And so that first couple of years, that was kind of the routine. I'd make some things at night as I worked. He would try them, give me feedback, and we would try to improve them as we went.
Okay. And so was your, one of our conversation we had this morning was really about the support system behind a business owner when you're just getting started. So it sounds like you got a pretty good support system in terms of helping you kind of follow that path that you wanted to follow.
And that emotional support too, especially with a 1-year-old.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. You have a wife when something like that happens. You hope she has confidence in you.
That's right. Yeah.
Here we go.
You find out quickly if she doesn't, I guess.
We've been through that. But it is very important because especially everybody's on the same page at home, your family, extended family. It can kind of help you get through those emotional lows of starting a business because, a lot of people have the idea of I want to work for myself or I want to kind of break free from that 9 to 5. But especially in those early days, the reality is not what people think it's going to be.
No.
A lot of struggle, a lot of hard work.
You guys know that just as well as I do.
Yeah.
And, the only, I guess, encouragement I got is before we moved down here, I worked for a guy named Lonnie Pope, who was an entrepreneur. And I was on my second go-around with him. R.J. Reynolds Tobacco Company had bought him out. They moved that operation to New Jersey. And so he came back in the same building and said, well, we're going to start again. And so I joined him again. And we were making flavors and fragrances of all things.
Oh, wow.
We always said, is anything you can smell or taste, we made it. We don't make the ice cream, we make the ice cream flavor. We don't make the detergent, we make the fragrance that goes in. Anyway, and when I decided to leave him, I went in his office, told him I was leaving. He stood up, shook my hand. He said, Steve, I wish you the best, and I hope someday you have a business of your own.
Yep.
I don't know where that came from. When I said it, I guess he knew me well enough to know that's probably where I needed to be. And that stuck.
The motivation.
And that was the motivation when I had an opportunity to help do it.
Well, we kind of touched on partners. I know you started with partners. Partnership it can come in many flavors. There are partnerships that work very well, and there are partnerships that really are quite difficult. And so can you talk about what your experience was with that? Did you have, partnerships at one point was kind of beneficial to you? At some point there was a need to go, because you don't have partners currently, so there was a need to kind of go your separate way. So what did that look like?
Well, my first two partners, there were three of us, they were really good fits, and that's why it worked so well to start with, and they really helped me in that. Well, I mentioned the contractor, who he had his own 25,000 square foot building that he did some interior stuff with and all, and I would go in at night and use his building while his crews weren't working. So I'd drive up from Columbus to Lithonia, 3 or 4 in the afternoon. They'd get out of there at 5, and I'd work sometimes all night, load up my vehicle, and drive back to Columbus. So, and he didn't charge me a thing those first few years.
It's amazing.
He had forklifts, things like that. He let me use. He even let me use some of his employees when we started growing.
Wow.
So he was a very valuable partner in those early days. Then the other one I had was here in Columbus, and he had a development and real estate business. He had all those offices that real estate agents use, so he let me have an office and didn't charge me for the office.
Great, yeah.
Let me use his administrative assistant at times, and so early on, those partners were just invaluable. I don't know what I would have done if I'd had to rent space in both locations. And
it also shows the creativity, too, because a lot of entrepreneurs, they kind of think, even if they have a great idea, a great product, or they're going to go into the service industry, that you got to automatically, day one, have the receptionist, have the assistant. And you can kind of be flexible and open-minded. And if you have friends or potential partners, you can leverage to, hey, it doesn't hurt to ask, right? You know,
and
let me have a corner office over here.
Both were very helpful in that way. Yeah, sharing and.
Did they have experience with that? Had they had other people come to them that wanted to start businesses and they kind of knew what was
required? Not to my knowledge. I don't think so.
This was a novel kind of idea for them as well.
These were friends. The contractor I'd known in my 7 years when I was working for that other company.
Right.
We were selling product to him in the Atlanta market. He was brilliant, did some very original things up there. And the other guy I was a friend with here in Columbus, and he knew what I'd been doing for 7 years, trusted it, and say, hey, I'd like to be a part of it.
So do you think that relationship and that sort of situation that you found yourselves in, or you found yourself in really, was something that allowed you to continue as yourself for longer than you would otherwise would have? Would you have had to bring on more people if you hadn't had that sort of arrangement?
Yeah, I'd say that's accurate. Once again, all the support that came with their locations and everything, so I didn't have to go after things, Right. When I finally started hiring people, I hired temps to start with at the plant up there, so I had that flexibility.
Was that a model that had been kind of set up for you? Did you see other people do that, or was that an idea that just came to you to hire temporary people?
Pretty much the only way to do it at the time, I didn't have any benefits to offer an employee, or anything. I'll pay you, that's it.
Right.
So using a temp service made sense to start it.
So did those people end up staying on longer term, or did they?
No, most of them.
Okay.
It was hard work, and
a lot of manual labor.
Yeah, with particularly a lot of manual labor, and so they didn't necessarily enjoy it, but they got a paycheck, so they would stick around. Yeah. So, quite honestly, the guy that was my first full-time employee up there was a retired AT&T guy that was working for the partner up there, and he just started helping me a little bit at the time, and he was extremely smart. He picked up on everything. I ended up 4 or 5 years later letting him run that operation up there as he learned how to match color and do the things that needed to be done. Very, very good piece of the puzzle. Yeah.
So was there an inflection point during the early years where you thought, I need to hire specific spots, specific positions, or was it more like the manual labor type work where you just needed people for the manufacturing process?
No, I needed to hire somebody for sales, and probably about the 4th, 5th year into it, I had...
Because you were doing sales alone?
Yeah, I was doing it myself, which made it very local, mostly just selling in the state of Georgia, Augusta, Savannah, Columbus, Atlanta.
So you're driving to all these places?
I am. Putting
a lot of miles on the car.
I put a lot of miles on vehicles back then, so...
and that's different than what you see that, social media has done a lot of great things, but it also gives people a really kind of weird view of how businesses run, operating, specifically how they start. So a lot of times when young people or young entrepreneurs are looking on social media and they're looking at a VC-funded startup, they have the whole staff before. It's called pre-revenue, right? Yeah. Now, that's not reality for most people. Most people have to get in and do every role. Yeah. You're your own assistant. You're your own accountant. You're your own salesperson. And I think doing it that way, which is the way we started, really allows you to grasp a healthy understanding of every aspect of the business, which helps you hire the right person.
I agree.
So you doing sales all those years, that was probably one of the most important positions that you've held in the 30, 40 years of doing your business.
It probably was. And I didn't enjoy the sales as much as some people do. Being a manufacturing guy, I'm comfortable in the manufacturing situation, But that's been true the whole time. I've had to learn how to do the next thing. I'd probably rather be out there on a forklift loading a truck, than doing some of the things I do now, spending time with attorneys.
Do you ever get to do that now? No. You never go down there and get on the forklift and take it for a spin?
If I do, it scares people to death, So you see it in their eyes. Oh, no, what's he doing?
Runs into one of his manager's trucks and just doesn't say anything.
Yeah, just keep moving.
Not sure what happened. Oh, that would be hilarious.
So you eventually you bought out the partners. And so was that an emotional kind of thing that happened, or was that always just strictly business?
No, it was very emotional. I was very, very close with both of them. The contractor up there, what unfortunately happened, he didn't manage his business well using our product, so he had quite a bit of debt to Master Wall. And what we did, we exchanged his debt for his stock.
Okay.
And so that one was easy, though painful. He's a great guy. He passed away a couple of years ago. And the other one was a little bit tougher in that now we were 50-50 partners. Mm-hmm. And he very much knew the value of the business and where it was headed. So it took a lot of talking, a lot of negotiating, and a lot of convincing to do it. But it's still very emotional, yeah.
Did that affect the culture of the business, that big change from 50-50 to not?
Not so much, because he wasn't active in the business. So he was on the peripheral, and I don't think it affected the culture much.
How creative, without getting into specifics, because, you don't have to, but how creative did you have to get with using debt or cash flow from the business to decide how to reduce his ownership?
Well, we got real creative with the bank and did an SBA loan for that, and paid on it for 10 years. So
when was this?
That was approximately 95, 96.
Okay. Right. So much different SBA process than I'm sure goes on now.
Yes.
Yeah. So that process can be quite hairy.
We've done it other times, and you basically give up on it before you get there almost. So
you have to kind of convince people that you don't actually need it.
That's
a lot of times
banking in general.
Happens,
if you need them, they don't want you.
That's right.
But they can be great partners.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming as your business has scaled and grown, I think you're right at 100 employees, maybe a little bit less. The banks can be your friend. So how important has financing been, and how do you balance using debt to scale versus pushing that cash flow straight to it, straight to the needs of the business?
As you know, in the business y'all are in, those lines of credit that the bank offer you are critical. For instance, our distributors and their contractors, they probably drag out their payments 60 to 90 days typically.
Yeah.
And of course my vendors don't do that.
Yeah.
They want to get paid 30 and 45 or less, So you've got to have something to bridge that gap, and we couldn't do it without banks and the lines of credits that they give us that we use.
Yeah, a lot of people get scared of debt and of using the banks, but when done correctly and within reason, the banks can be one of the most important partners a business owner can have, and they don't take equity.
Yeah. It's sort of a taboo subject, though. A lot of people feel very strongly about debt, and there's a lot of financial talking heads out there. Dave Ramsey's probably the most famous that really discourages the use of debt. And for a lot of people, it can be difficult because you have to be really disciplined to do that, and so it can lead to problems. But we look at it as it's a tool, and a tool is not good or bad. It has no inherent morality. I guess it's just a tool.
I agree, and I'll give a hometown plug. Synovus, when they were CB&T at the time, were very, very good to me.
Excellent.
And I don't know what I'd done without them, because that's who I had the relationships personally with, and then those were my first business relationships for banking.
So did you start with them all the way back in?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Sure did. Still banking with them now. Now we have other banking relationships, but they're still the biggest share of our banking.
Can we get hashtag Synovus? Can we get a sponsor?
There you go.
I don't think they'll sponsor us. They compete in some
I'll settle
areas,
for some Clingstone tickets.
Clingstone tickets.
Shout out.
It's a joke for the SEC and that's watching. The regulators, it's a joke.
So what advice would you have to somebody who is in a partnership, who is thinking about getting into a partnership? Are there ways that you think you could navigate that and be successful in that? Or is it just everybody's different?
Let's say everybody's different. I know for myself, we have some other businesses under the Masterwall umbrella. And when we set them up, I said, I will not do it unless I own 51% or more.
Okay.
And this was mostly with my sons and some very close people already employed by Masterwall. But I just was not going to get myself in a position where I had no power, let's say, with other people that were partners.
Yeah.
So what you feel like that's something you'll continue to do is have ownership of whatever is created. Are these companies that Masterwall created in and of itself, or are they acquisitions, or are they a combination of both?
A combination of both.
Okay.
We did an acquisition of a company in South Texas called Rydar, and we just pulled them into the Master Wall business itself. So we didn't have any stock to split up or anything. We bought the stock that they had and split it up with the Master Wall stockholders.
Okay.
We just bought a little company 3 years ago now. They're a little template company coming out of New Hampshire that we were doing business with, and business wasn't going well for them, and they needed some help. So we went in, purchased them, moved them to Columbus, put them in our warehouse there in Midland, and worked there. So we've done several little things like that.
Does it come up pretty often? Is that a situation like that where you have a vendor or a supplier or something that is struggling and you kind of...
We've done that 2 or 3 times. We find it if they're struggling. That's, number one, they need the help. Number two, It's a good time to buy them.
Yeah.
Just quite honestly.
Yeah. Well, valuations a lot of time with business owners are difficult. And so there are definitely companies that exist purely for that reason. They'll come in and value business according to industries and things like that. I feel like as much of a leadership position, because you've held leadership positions within the industry as well, not only Masterwall, do you feel like you have a pretty good grip on valuation of things, or do you feel like you need to have the third party come in and kind of help you with that?
We take that help when it's available. In our industry, there's really 4 or 5 large businesses owned by like Rust-Oleum and Sika and some of these very large European corporations. So we're not looking to buy them or anything, but we do get offers to be purchased. Actually, once or twice a year, typically, one of them approaches. And
wow.
And I can assure you, they don't want to pay what I want for my business. Besides the fact it's, my sons are there, and we've decided this was going to be a long-term thing for the family. So,
that's actually a really good segue, because I know you have family in the business. How has that been from both an emotional side? You've had business partners that were not related to you. Now you sort of have partners, they may not be partners, but people that work with you that are related to you. How is the dynamic there, and have you had to evolve that over the years?
Well, it's evolved, particularly with my sons. Now, all 4 of my children at one time, even my daughter, worked in the business till she started having children and had to step out and stay home with that. All 3 of my sons are different. They all have different gifts. And
which one's your favorite?
Well, this is funny, because my youngest one, when he signs something involved with the family, he usually signs it the favorite. It's kind of an inside joke. Of course, everybody in the company knows it now too, and they'll call him the favorite when we're in a meeting or something.
That's a soft power play.
Yeah. He knows what he's doing. Shout out Stuart, right?
Yeah, Stuart. Yeah, the youngest.
Yeah. So the dynamic with that, do you have to? Is it a pretty good understanding of business is business and family is family, or did you have to kind of develop that dynamic that's like, hey, when we're at the house or we're at the weekend, it's a little different, but when we're at work, there is a dynamic for the culture of the firm to kind of be maintained and for...
It really runs together. I mean, we can be at home having Sunday dinner and something come up about the business, and before you know it, we're knee deep.
Strategizing
in the subject, strategizing, making decisions, things like that. Now, the mostly the women that aren't involved in the business, of course, they don't enjoy that much. But it's better than the political discussions.
Right.
So.
Well, it also speaks to the fact that you were able to go into a business that you really had a passion for, and the kids, take that passion as well, because let's be honest, you're not going to have that conversation at the dinner table if you don't really care about your work. You want to do the opposite. You never want to talk about it. So really it's testament
seems to be a net positive.
Yeah, it's a testament to the fact that, they've grown up in it and that's all they've known for their life, and they feel really connected to it. It's a part of the family name, Maybe they take ownership in it. So, I would say that's probably a pro.
Well, it is them starting so young, and my oldest son at the time, 14 years old, I don't know, we get in trouble here, but he would come in after school and make samples for us.
Okay, yeah.
So he's really been working in it since he was 14 years old, and they all started doing summer work as soon as they could, and so.
One of the I guess more difficult aspects of setting the next generation up to take over a business enterprise, statistically. They have about a 50-50 chance, the second generation, but when it gets to the third is when things really start to deteriorate. So what's kind of on your mind for not the kids, but maybe the grandkids? What are you thinking about as far as continuity Does that kind of play into the exit plan for the business long term, or?
Yeah, yes. We actually have one of our grandson, our first grandson, is working in the business now. He's 25, Blake.
Wow.
And I know the things you just repeated. I had a banker come to me and ask me the question the same way. Now, okay, you do know that that third generation usually screws it up.
Yeah.
And
statistically, yes.
Yeah, I said, okay.
Sorry, Blake.
So I've started, so I've actually started talking that, so he and the others are going to be very aware that when this lands on you, you better hold it, and take care of it.
Just as important as you're kind of being that you need that founder mentality at that level, I think, to keep it going.
Yep.
So,
yeah, how do you, I'm selfishly for my own, how do you facilitate that in the next generation? How do you pass that desire along? Because not everybody just innately has it.
Right. We have such a culture that I don't think you could work around us without the culture affecting you. And I'm convinced that Blake, for instance, being around this culture, he's going to have pride in the business. He's going to feel like it's partly his, and he'll carry it on. We'll see.
Knock on wood.
Yeah.
Hope it happens.
Yeah.
Come back in 60 years.
Yeah.
Check in. Check in.
Well, cool. Is it? So you talked a little bit about leaving a legacy. So you guys are kind of having those thoughts at this point about working next to the next generation and what that looks like as far as passing it along and.
Yes, we have been talking about it for years. Obviously, I have a chief operating officer, Mike Irving, who's been with me about 26, 27 years. And I've always called him my right-hand man. He's the detail guy. And what I did was one of the smartest things I did. I'm not bragging, but
let's hear it.
I figured this out early on. I put him between me and my sons.
Okay.
And so they report to him. And like I said, that was one of the greatest things I've ever done.
So was there a period before that wasn't the case?
Right.
Okay.
Right. And once I figured that out, it made my life so much better. and he's much better. He's, like I said, a detailed guy. He's a planner, good at looking down the road. And they needed to see that part. I'm a big picture guy. I take risk. And management is not necessarily my specialty, but it's Mike's. So he needed to show them what that looked like. And he has done a good job with it.
Well, that's awesome. So thinking about moving to the next generation, but also growth, thinking about the company growth. So you guys famously have the tagline that they're large enough to meet your needs, but small enough to know your name. And so how do you keep that going as you grow, as you hire on more people, as you have relationships, as you hand off the business? What are the things that stay or that promote that culture?
Well, number one, the culture is very intentional. Everybody we employ reads Mark Sanborn's book, The Fred Factor.
Okay.
And that in itself speaks of service and how to treat people. And we talk that all the time. It's just a big part of our culture, treating people well. And like you said, the tagline we've used for years is big enough to meet your needs, but also know your name.
Yeah.
Small enough for that.
Have you found that the culture, because a lot of companies lose that, they miss that, even if they're small, do you see that having the right culture is a motivating factor in and of itself, aside from compensation, to help drive employees, help them feel like they have buy-in and they're a part of the family? Because it is a family business, and if you're not a family member, you sometimes can feel like you're kind of maybe on the outside, but do you think that culture does enough to kind of stitch them in and make them feel like they want to stay, aside from the comp?
That's a great question, because it's a concern, has been a concern over the years, that we're able to keep employees, even though we're a family business like that. And I got to tell you, we've got a multitude of employees that have been with us over 20 and many over 25 years. So somehow we've been able to blend that okay. And you got to care about your people. And I say, I wrote a book, and one of the things I say in it is you've got to love your people. And that almost sounds corny, because it's hard to get people to buy into that.
Yeah.
Now, the best thing to do is show it.
Yeah.
Me, myself, and those around me. But if you don't love your people, they know it. If you don't care about them, they know it. And I think in my opinion, that's why we've been able to hold on to good long-term employees for years and years. I think they know we love them and care for them.
So what are the practical aspects of that? That's a big, like, promise, love people. How do you do that in reality? And what do you try to avoid doing?
My love gift that I give is giving, and we love to notice people doing special things and award them for that.
Okay.
And we do that often. And that's my love language, as I just said, is giving. So I know, for instance, that's not everybody's, but right. They see me do it and they see me practice it, and I've watched. They pick up on it and they start using it the same way over the years.
Leading by example in that. And your book comes out in September. Is that correct, or is it already
August,
out?
actually.
August
12th release.
And the name of the book is?
Believer Bulldog Coach, which kind of encompasses the whole thing. You know?
Yeah.
I have a faith-based philosophy of business and everything in my life. Bulldog goes to the pretty much the intensity and the relentlessness of our approach to things. And then I was a basketball coach for 20 years also, high school basketball coach. So the coaching taught me a lot about managing, and it was a big tool in how I learned to deal with people at Masterwall. So
your mission statement at the company sort of encompasses that faith-based style that you talked about. How have you seen that affect your leadership over the years, or the style that you have, or the angle that you come at it from?
Well, I think it goes back to just like my love language of giving. You know, people, when they know it's a faith-based, they're watching all the time.
Right.
And as long as you're practicing what you're preaching, it goes a long way.
Yeah.
And our mission statement, as you said, is very descriptive on how we want to take care of people, and how in the end, whatever we achieve, we want to give God the glory for it. That's the final statement in the mission statement.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. That's have you seen that sort of insight permeate through the culture at Masterwall as well? Have you?
In general, yes.
Okay.
You know, people, those first few years, you talk to people about the business, and if they were, let's say, Christians, they had this idea that you wanted to hire all Christians and only work with Christians. And I found early on that that's not a good idea. Number one, if they're all Christians and all think like you do, how are you going to affect them?
Right.
So I found that a good diversity of people is really good. You can affect and influence them more if they're not a Christian, you know.
Yeah.
So
when you on the coach aspect of it, how did that help you in? Because I'm sure now you have people that help with onboarding new employees and new talent. But how did the coach aspect of your personality come into helping you find the right people when you were the one doing the majority of the hiring?
Well, it helped in that you become a noticer. Andy Andrews wrote a book called The Noticer, and it's you watch people, you notice their strengths, and you notice their temperaments, and you can start fitting them into whatever it is, business, basketball, whatever. And just like in basketball and business, you take somebody and put them in a position, and it's going to be a lot for them. There's nothing more rewarding than to watch that person start achieving.
Right.
So that was that way in basketball when I was coaching. That's the way in business. You bring a young guy in, he wants to do something, you say, okay, we'll give you the chance, and you see him succeed and grow in that. That's so rewarding.
Yeah, that's a good point, because that's also like the life of an entrepreneur, basically, which is that you're very unsure a lot of times, at least a lot of people I've spoken to, but you have to do something, and it's almost like, do you try to get it right the first time, or do you just do it and kind of pivot? So it's kind of a balance there that I've found a lot of times.
Yeah, you got to make mistakes,
right?
And I've learned that, and goes back to when you get to. Hope you get to read my book, because it's never give up.
Yeah.
You just can't quit, and it helps when you have 4 children, and one of them's very young, and you've got to
feed them.
There you go.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we talked about driving around. I laughed because that's how we started our business. We drove. Get up in the morning at 5 o'clock in the morning and drive all day till the next night.
Hours. I think our longest route. So we did a lot of house calls working with the Dave Ramsey system years ago, 12, 13 years ago, and so we would leave Monroe, Louisiana, go to Texarkana, go to Little Rock, then to El Dorado, then back to Monroe. 8-9 hour giant circles, but you're up early, you're up late, and it is a great motivating factor, because our wives looked at us like, no health benefits, where's the paycheck? Explain to me how you're paid again. And but that's part of the entrepreneurial spirit is, you got to take that great idea that you want and the freedom and the passion to help people, because at the end of the day, you need people to scale, and you have to have people to sell a product to or to give value to in service. So it's all about people, but balancing that with the harsh reality that essentially you got to kill what you eat, and there's not that many people that are going to sit down and tell you exactly how to do it, and even so, you got to learn it yourself.
Right.
So
you got to be somewhat of a risk taker, and there's a lot of people that can't do that.
Yeah, his Toyota, I think we
we killed that thing.
Ended up killing it after 300,000 total miles.
We drove a lot of miles.
But Zoom, thank God, has relieved us.
I bet it has.
Video call has relieved us.
I bet it has. How nice, huh?
Yeah, it is. It is. So we covered the faith aspect, and we covered the coach aspect, and you touched a little bit on the bulldog. And not too long ago, we interviewed a business owner that had that very same approach to tenacity, the not giving up when you face tough times. And inevitably, if you're starting a business, we know this, you're going to have tough times, and a lot of times it's going to happen after some of your most earliest wins. I remember that was for us. We had some really big wins, and then you hit some tough times, and it's I really question, why am I doing this?
So it's a roller coaster ride.
Yeah. Walk through that tenacity and how it helped you when you hit some of the lows.
Well, I have in my book, it's called 3 Near-Death Experiences, because they truly were. And I'm talking about business death.
Yeah.
And one of the first ones was we had a liability insurer. When we started getting some lawsuits, our whole industry has changed. We had to change our system because of some water intrusion issues. And we did this back in the late 90s.
Yeah.
And so we started getting sued by homeowners for water intrusion. And one of our first liability insurers went bankrupt on us. And that was a pretty scary thing. But the good news is somebody thought ahead. The Georgia Insurance Commission, if you have a liability carrier who goes bankrupt, they have to pick up your policy.
Right.
And thank goodness they were there. But it was so bad that they approached us, came in and said, we would like to buy out that policy. We'll give you cash for what you think you're going to need here, but we want out of this.
Right.
So I got one of my attorneys, we evaluated it, went back and forth, and decided to take it. And an interesting thing happened. Once that money was gone, word got out, they talked to each other, and all the other insurance companies and other attorneys quit suing us because they didn't want to kill us, they just wanted our money.
Right.
So that was one of the near-death experiences, and we've had others. We had the Great Recession, where it took the construction industry really closer to probably 7-8 years to recover from it. It did us anyway, and we cut salaries. We try to keep as many people employed as we could. So upper management took 40 and 50% cuts in pay just to keep people around. And we made it through it. It was very tough.
It was really a great depression for real estate and involved any construction.
And construction.
All that stuff.
It was terrible. Really was. And the other one, the other big one was we had a what they call pyrite in our finishes, and literally in the humidity, these spots would appear and drain down the wall. And I'm getting calls. Our product looks like it's bleeding and crying, on people's houses. And so we literally had to go in and fix every one of those. And it was called a pick and clean. You pick the spots, clean the wall, and then you'd usually have to paint it. And we had dozens and dozens of those. And at the time, we were very small.
Yeah.
We had very little resources to do that, but we somehow did it. So
it feels like a lot of times, at least for us, like you take a couple steps forward and then you take a couple steps back. It's
Yes.
never like you bust open through the door and everything's great and rosy and peachy. There's always going to be something, whether it's great financial crisis or it's COVID for a lot of retail stores and things like that come and sort of change the way we have to respond to situations.
Boy, you said it right. For instance, back to the liability insurance real quick. We were paying like $8,000 a year for liability insurance in the early 90s. By early 2000s, we were like $350,000 to $400,000 annually for liability insurance. And we weren't that big at the time.
Yeah.
It was devastating.
So that was not a fun phone call when it came in that said your insurer is bankrupt.
No, it wasn't.
I got mad when my home insurance tried to go up.
Yeah,
that's a big multiple. That's a 50x multiple.
Yeah,
and a lot of people are facing situations with. Really, aside from entrepreneurs, just people in their individual life where they feel like they've worked a lot. They should be closer to their goals for retirement, but it's that one step forward, two steps forward, one step back.
Yeah.
And I think we can all use that tenacity in our life to just stay focused. Problems come your way, solve them. In a way, it is a blessing because you learn a lot from adversity and you learn a lot from solving problems, and you just don't give in and keep pushing forward.
Yeah.
And especially if you're competing in the business, a lot of people go by the wayside because they just give up.
Yeah.
So you can sometimes beat out your competition just by staying focused and pushing ahead.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times there's like now, I'm sure it was different, when you started, but there are a lot of resources out there now of different ideas and things you can lean on should you run into, every situation is different. But at the time, was it, you're just relying on your own intuition and maybe some friends that you have that maybe have experience in some of these issues? I mean, there's no rule book for this. There's no map that you're following when you get a call from an insurer that says we're belly up. What's your next move?
You start talking to people. Like you said, you try to find out what can happen here. And as bad as people dislike attorneys, sometimes, they're your best friend when it comes to things like that. I've had some great attorneys over the years. We use Paige Scranum here in town, and have used them from the beginning. In fact, a quick story: when we were incorporating, my partners and I met who was our corporate attorney, who was Cecil Cheeves at the time. And we met, signed the paperwork, and Cecil paused. He said, well, why don't we pray and pray blessing on your corporation now? And he did. He stopped, he prayed, and I was so impressed with that and felt like it was a God thing. And here we are 37 years later, and glad he prayed.
Yeah.
So
it's awesome.
It's great.
If you had the ear of somebody who was trying to start a manufacturing business in this climate, all the tariffs conversations, everything going on, what's your advice to that person about, maybe they're in the first few years of it, or maybe they're thinking about getting it off the ground. They're not sure what angle to take it from.
Well, number one, I tell them I hope you've got some resources besides just a little retirement bank account or something to start. And you better be very committed. And I'm sure different industries do different things and handle it differently. But if you're going to be a manufacturer, particularly of products, it's going to be tough.
Right.
So much EPA regulations to you name it. You better find somebody that knows how things work when it comes to the environment and other things. And I'll tell them this. One thing that's kind of paid off for me over the years, and please don't take this as a brag, but you need to be likable.
Right.
And, if you're not likable, you better have a lot of money, and you better have a lot of associations and things. And I've said this even to my kids. I said, I didn't pass Algebra 2, but I got a social pass because my teacher liked me. Right. and I have found that to be true in business. Yeah. Being likable will take you places you never dreamed. And if you're going to start a business, I highly recommend you're likable.
Yeah, I agree. I was building a house during COVID remotely and working with a contractor here out of Muskogee, and we were kind of brainstorming on some issues we had with some subs. And, I kind of, in Louisiana at the time, everything was shut down and kind of locked in and kind of getting frustrated. And he said, listen, you catch more flies with honey than you do
There you
hot
go.
sauce.
Absolutely.
And it's true, and especially when you understand, again, it's about people, and you need people. You need to be likable to people. And I think more people could benefit from that. Doesn't mean you have to be a pushover or be taken advantage of, but just, I like that, being likable, being nice, being cordial.
I drive my sons particularly and some of the other people that I work with crazy because they feel like I'm too nice and maybe I'm a pushover at times. But I think in the end, I'm not. I'm just, I'm a nice guy. But people know if you're faking it. You know, you it's got to be real.
Yeah, and you have to have that balance too, because you have to know your goals and know what you want to get out of things. And to Matt's point, you can't just go around bumping into everything. I mean, you have to know that, hey, I want to get from point A to point B, and this is how I have to do it. And maybe I have to, make some people not happy with me, but it's not because I'm not a nice person.
Happen.
It's business.
Yeah, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
That's crucial.
Reminded me of the guy that was going the wrong way down the road.
Oh my goodness!
Just a minute ago, and he had a disagreement with the granite curb.
Granite curb. Yeah, you took a chunk out of that thing. That was wild.
He has a Toyota Corolla, and he goes the wrong way, and then realizes it, and then takes the car onto these big curbs that are at the intersection. So, don't be that person and just try to ram your way through things for sure.
No, not good. Not good.
Well, if you thought about, we talked about some wins and losses and challenges. If you thought about those, are your biggest wins, were they somehow related to what you consider to be your biggest losses in the moment, your biggest challenges, or vice versa?
Not necessarily. I think, for instance, one of the biggest wins was our industry has an association called EMA, and I went to Phoenix when we were just 3 or 4 years into it, and very few people had even heard of us, but they were having an association meeting in Phoenix, and I went out there, wanted to be a part of it, wanted to come in, but we had not joined the association, so they wouldn't even let me in. So I went all the way to Phoenix to this meeting and didn't get to be a part of it, but here we are. It's about 7, 8 years ago we joined the association. Once again, not bragging, but I was president for 2 terms, 4 years, up till this year when I stepped down from it. So that was a big win, that we finally got in a position where people noticed us, and we were a big part of the industry. So that was a big one. We've got some really nice sales numbers, and that's a big win. We can make money and handle it well, and that's big.
Yeah, and give people opportunity, give people jobs, and I think anything that can keep the local manufacturing production here, show that it's profitable, and give people career paths. I mean, it's absolutely great. And the networking aspect of what you said, I mean, we personally have benefited from that, especially early on. Going to any opportunity to network, to be a part of industry events, and to it's okay to ask questions because you don't know everything, and to figure out what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean, has there been any advice that you've been given other than the advice you were given early on, which I hope your business works out well? Was there anybody that gave you any kind of nuggets that you pull out occasionally, like, oh, this guy said this one thing and really kind of motivated me?
I probably have had a lot of people do that, and what I've hung on to is the never give up part of it. You know, Don Wilhite was my pastor for 30-something years here, and that was a constant. I watched him build quite a ministry over there. They've got assisted living, they've got the retirement community, all kind of the school. And Don Wilhite was the guy that just would never give up. He had a plan, and he was not going to be stopped. He felt like it was God's plan, so he really was motivated to make it work. That's probably the best advice and the best example I've been given over the years.
And this is Calvary. And
know a little something about Calvary.
What a large presence, large development, like you said, and just I think probably the most impactful faith-based school and facilities in Columbus, I would say. Now, somebody disagrees, don't get mad, but I would definitely think so, and a wonderful reputation.
Yeah.
And you guys are still involved with Calvary.
Yeah.
You have grandkids that go there still?
I've got all of my grandkids that are still in school go there.
Okay.
And even our great-granddaughter goes there.
Okay. Another generation now.
Yeah, got another generation started there. My wife worked there. She was the admissions director for 20 years before she came and joined me. And so, we've got a big tie there. And we still go to church there also.
Okay. Cool.
That's great.
Well, we're not going to keep you much longer. I think we're at the end of our time, but I appreciate the time. Tell us again about the book, when the book is coming out, where can we get the book from?
Believer Bulldog Coach. You can order it on Amazon. You can pre-order now. We've
Great.
got audio version, digital version, all that. So
Excellent.
August 12th is the release date. So
Okay.
it's just about what we just talked about
Excellent.
never giving up.
Yeah, and the other two books that you mentioned, one was, so that people can make sure they have this, The Noticer.
The Noticer.
And then the other was
Andy.
Fred.
The Fred Factor.
The Fred Factor. So some great, and we'll have to buy a bundle of your books to, give out as well.
I'm a big reader, so that's just the short list right there.
Yeah,
that's
you
the
can
short
you can
list.
you can give us a whole list of things to read. But that's great. I mean, that's definitely a resource that not a lot of people take advantage of. But there's a wealth of knowledge to be sourced from those. But I mean, I hope that we touched a little bit on the generational transfer. I hope you'll come back another time so we can talk more about that. Maybe we can talk to one of the kids who are in the business with you. Just kind of get both sides of that conversation. What does it look like from the generation that's passing it down, and what does it look like from the generation that's going to receive that? I think that'd be a super interesting conversation. So I hope we can get you back here. But
I'd love to do it.
I appreciate your
that'd be
time
good.
today. Thanks for coming out here. And,
Absolutely.
and,
Enjoyed speaking with you. Nice to
yeah.
get to know you.
Conversation.
Put
Good to
my
see you.
hand over the microphone like
That's all
that.
right.
But yeah, thank you very much.
Thank y'all.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.